Alright, this is going to be fun. So season 3 is going to be coming out real soon, and I'm personally excited for all the new characters that are going to be coming out. That being said, I do believe that there are a couple of characters that have been shown or at least hinted at that have a good chance of becoming playable. And I want to try and get my thoughts out before I'm proven wrong or anything like that. Now, I'm listing all of these characters by a playability chart between 0 and 10. 10 doesn't necessarily mean that they are guaranteed, although that wouldn't be an unfair uh, idea. And 0 means that they're not going to be playable at all. But frankly, for this list, there's no one who's going to be at a 10 or a 0, for reasons we'll probably get to later. My criteria in terms of who would be listed as playable are characters that must be story relevant or connected to an already playable character or faction, and they can't perform a service like Elfie and a music store. Because considering that Zenless is a game where playable characters kind of go around different places for you to meet them and hang out with them, would be kind of weird if you had these service characters show up outside of their store. I don't know, that just seems like a low chance of it happening. We're gonna start at the bottom with the character I want to see the most, but probably is the least likely to happen, is Isolde. Now, of course, by this point I should say, spoiler warning, if you haven't played the story or anything like that, don't move forward from this because there is going to be some story spoilers here. But anyway, Isolde is a character that has a lot more going for her than I think most people will note, will give her credit for. For instance, she has 3 boss variants. The Filer, Miasmic Priest as Mavarok, I'm not correcting myself, and the doppelganger herself. As far as I know, there isn't another character who has 3 variants of a boss fight to them and isn't playable. That's one thing. She's also one of the more relevant characters in Zenless story, at least as far as season 2 is concerned. She has been seen in, I want to say, 3 patches. We meet her, I think, in 2.1. We deal with her in 2.2. Then we technically see her again in 2.5 as a miasmic ghost, which is something else that's interesting. As a miasmic ghost, she actually has the capacity to not only not interact, well, no, technically it is interaction with characters by talking to them. She is aware of what's happening around her. There's a lot going on with Isolde that makes me think that if the devs did want to bring her back, they at least have a more foundation than, say, Pompeii and justification to figure out some kind of weird Zenless thing to bring her back to life. And I don't think it would be the craziest thing that could happen, but she is dead, kind of. And regardless of how much I would want her to come back, regardless of all the things that I could point out to say, like, oh, she's different, guys, she's not like the other girls, guys, this is still, like, not exactly enough to say that her likelihood of coming back is high. However, I will not give up on this agenda until the end of season 3. By that point, I feel like it's complete delusion, and not even the angels can help me with that. The next character on my list is Damian. Damian is interesting in the sense that if you go back and watch the season 2 teaser trailer, he is shown alongside all the other characters that ended up being playable. Regardless if they ended up as A ranks or S ranks, doesn't really matter. Every character from that teaser trailer, well, technically, another character was shown but wasn't playable, but we'll get to him later. Damian was visibly shown with Zhao, and it seemed like he was going to be a playable character. Just like Isolde, he was in a prominent spot in the story, was shown in multiple patches story. So, what happened? Well, I don't know. I don't know what happened to him. But after 2.2, he never showed up again. Not in any real form. That is until one of Zhao's trailers. And he's just there dancing with her, taking pictures, doing her chores, all this good stuff. And then in Promia's one of the posts on the ZZZ YouTube channels, among other places, there's this post where Promia is being told by Zhao, I believe, to take a break. And in that post, it's mentioned that Damian is out on a mission. Now, with all that being said, I feel like this is the devs telling us, hey, don't forget about this guy. Don't forget about Damian. He still has some relevance in this story. But that's not exactly proof of anything, nor does it really tell you when or how he will show up again. I just think if Severian can have a delayed release, why not Damian? But until I see more information, which I feel like there's enough to say that he is likely to come as a playable character, but until I see more, I'm going to keep him at a low score until, yeah, sure, whatever. But I'm not giving up hope just yet. Up next, Vesper. Vesper, we meet her in 2.6, and she is kind of, to me, she kind of gives off the similar vibe to Pulchra. Now, Pulchra is kind of an interesting case because apparently she was always meant to be playable, and that's why, but I don't know, something about that never sit well with me, because if she was always meant to be playable, kind of seems curious that she showed up, what was it, 3 patches after her release? Or her introduction? Anyway, that's not the argument I'm trying to make. My point is, Vesper to me is kind of in a similar position. She was an antagonist, but she never did anything wrong, per se. She also, like Pulchra, doesn't hate any of the main cast, any of our fair agents, and just like Pulchra, it seems like we have at least one playable character, being Arya, who does want to see Vesper come back and, you know, be a good guy and all that, just like Pulchra. So I'm thinking, okay, if Vesper has these similar traits, then I don't see why she couldn't then be returned, if not in just a playable character, then story-wise. Because again, she's not dead, she's not gone, it's just that she's in a precarious situation right now, but nothing that she can't get over. Not to mention that if at the very least the pattern for musical patches are always going to happen at the end of the new year, then of course the devs are going to need some candidates for that spot. And Vesper, to me, seems like a pretty good one. So middle of the pack for me in terms of whether or not Vesper will be playable. But I don't see why she couldn't. That's probably saying it a bit too much. I don't see why she couldn't show up. Anyway, next up is Zhao's boss. Zhao's boss is, or the leader of Krampus, is, there's probably more members of Krampus that we don't know about that will probably show up sooner than Zhao's boss. But outside of knowing any other playable Krampus members, I do believe Zhao's boss has a chance of becoming playable. Now, I think this But remember that Isolde did did suffer a devastating fate despite being the leader of her faction. So it's definitely there's definitely a chance where Zhao's boss suffers the Isolde treatment. However, I think the only argument that keeps me believing that Zhao's boss has a high chance of becoming playable is because every faction has a boss. Every faction has a boss. And right now, Krampus does not have what I would call a boss. Now, the comparison to Obel Squad, Morphe and Magus, you can say are like the field boss for Obel Squad. So, not having the boss of the boss in that faction is okay. But Krampus absolutely does not have a boss member of their faction. So, outside, unless you want to say that Zhao would take up that spot, having the boss of Krampus become playable just seems like the next best thing. Next up is the in-game celebrities. This includes characters like Monica, Astriel, and a few others that I'm not thinking at the top of my head. But any character that is famous in the entertainment side of things, I feel like would count towards being an in-game celebrity. Now, why do I think these guys would have a high chance of being playable is kind of the same reason I think Vesper is. Because if we're always going to get a Gilded Carrot Day festival, and those patches are usually the idol music / entertainment patches, then again, you're probably going to need characters to fill in those spaces. But we also, just like Astriel and just like a few other characters, all these celebrities we do have their posters, we do have their name drops in certain places. So just like Astra, I would think that it would only be a matter of time before we see them in game and potentially be playable. Now, oh boy, there was I was having a conversation about this on Reddit, and there was someone who said that, for example, Monica can never be playable because she can't sing. Which I don't really understand what that has to do with anything, considering that a lot of characters can't sing, and yet they're playable. And if you're worried about her fighting capability, may I point you to Suna, who is probably the least capable fighter in this entire game, and yet not only is she playable, she has a defensive assist. So, I don't know, I don't think it's off the table. It's just more of a question of if, when, how, why, but I think the chances are pretty high. The next character I want to talk about is Cersea or Cecilia. Now, I want to bring this up real quick. One of the things someone would argue against Cecilia is that she owns a store. But remember, my criteria is that they can't run a service. Because for right now, Cecilia does not run a service. She owns 404, but she's not, you don't go to 404, open up a menu, and there she is, Cecilia, as like a character. Cecilia's kind of moving around, at least around 404, so you could imagine if she was playable to see her in other parts of New Eridu. Wouldn't be too crazy, right? Not to mention, she's a character that is back in the limelight of public notoriety. She's not singing for all the world to see. She's not back in the game, I don't think, but she is tied to the Angels of the Delusion. She does have that rapport with Astriel. So, again, given that she's a singer, probably not as powerful as Astra, but not the point, I don't see why she can't be playable. No, I will not. I don't want to talk about that. That's another thing from Reddit where someone was saying something that I thought was really weird. I don't really have too many other reasons why I believe Cecilia will be playable. It's just kind of, I'm basing this mostly off of the music and entertainment side of things. And also, I really like her design. That definitely helps. The last character I want to talk about on this list is Yi Yun. I'm not doing another one. Void Hunter older brother. Now this one is an easy slam dunk as to being playable compared to everyone else on this list. Not only was he a prominent character in version 2 story, not only does he have an alternate form like his sister, he also is someone who's looking to do research for Void Hunter weapons, which is something that we as the players are going to be focusing on a lot moving forward into the story and the narrative. There's also more that I feel like he can do. If he is researching Void Hunter weapons, we can always go to him, ask him questions, bring him back into the story. And if you're going to bring him back into the story, might as well bring him back as a playable character. Why not? I think he definitely has what is needed to build up a character moveset. I think he could fit into the Youngquay Summit team, at least depending on how he would be made. I think basically there's so much story and lore potential for this character that him being playable is just a slam dunk. He's not the highest of highs when it comes to probability chance, but I do think more than anybody else, this guy has to be a guaranteed character to be playable, just given everything that he has available. Some honorable mentions or things that I want to touch on in regards to this conversation. I want to firstly mention that I feel highly vindicated to say that Severian was always going to be playable. I remember the naysayers. I was there when people were saying that Severian was never going to be played. Listen, I don't even care if he's an A rank at this point. I just can sit back, look on a grateful universe and say, I was right. I was right. On the other hand, talking about Sunbringer, I will admit, didn't think she was going to be playable. There's a lot of reasons for this, but the main one is that I didn't think that the devs would make a first generation Void Hunter playable for a myriad of reasons, including power, lore implications, and a bunch of other stuff that just made it seem completely unlikely to happen. And then the devs did it twice. So I'd have to eat my words on that one. Sunbringer is playable, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Obviously, I could talk about the other characters that are coming down the line, but we only know so much about them. So I guess I'll just leave it like this. Which characters are you most excited for to see? Are there any characters that you think should be playable, have the most likely of being playable? And don't use my criteria, because my criteria isn't right. I don't even know if it matches the design philosophy. I don't even know if using Pulchra as an example is even correct. But I want to hear what you guys have to say. Hope you had fun listening to this. I don't know if this is going to be a normal thing for me, but I like ZZZ. I love ZZZ. I like talking about his lore and his characters. If you guys want to see more of that, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys some other time.